Okay, so this is the Whole Man Academy podcast, episode 73. My guest, I'm pleased to say today, is Chris Barez-Brown. Let's list author, speaker of some of the great books, Upping Your Elvis. We're going to talk about all different things today. You'd be surprised what, after reading his books, all these little questions and thoughts that come up. But firstly, Chris, how have you been through kind of lockdown? Because, I mean, I forget how many bloody lockdowns we've had now. It's like 408 or something. But what was it like for you? You know, with your, obviously I've watched you do different talks and having to adapt to it.
Yeah, no, well, you know, when we started out, I just had the biggest series of live events I've ever had in my life booked in all around the world. And of course that disappeared. It started in March and that's when lockdown happened. So all of that just vanished.
Yeah.
And then we spent a bit of time just thinking about, well, you know, how do we use our time well? And in that time, wrote a book, launched a new tech business. We'll talk all about that. But I actually quite like the space. You know, we had great weather. And you know, I'm very lucky where I live, so that makes a big difference. And then I think it took about 4 or 5 months for my clients to go, we can actually do this digitally. And then since September, we've been absolutely flat out again. So business-wise, you know, it's been an interesting journey, but actually the space has been really good for me because I've got to do things I wouldn't usually be able to do. So those first few months were great. As far as kind of life is concerned, you know, the first one. My wife thinks I'm a hermit, right? You know, I don't go out at the best of times, so it suits me perfectly. But actually by now I am starting to crawl the walls slightly. So even I'm saying I'd like to see some people.
Yeah.
So I think it's time.
I was going to ask because, you know, I mean, I've watched, you know, your TED Talks, etc. And for me, the few talks that I've done, you feed off the energy of a crowd, and also, you know, it's understanding whether they find it funny or they, you know, need to change the way you're talking. I just wondered for you, because that must be one of the big things. You know, it's about energy and passion and about making people think differently. And then people are right. You're looking at a box and a camera and do it.
Yeah. It's broadcast. It's like telly, isn't it? So you get nothing back. So, I mean, a lot of the time we can get some sort of interaction if we're doing live stuff. But obviously in this world, you do have to do some broadcast stuff where you have no idea at all. And actually, I've just done a 12-week program where, you know, we got very little feedback until the end, you know, so I've done 3 months of work. And at the end, they went, "That was brilliant." And I'm going, well, it would have been lovely if I'd have known that earlier, you know, because you're kind of guessing a bit, aren't you? So that's tough. That is tough. That's a different world I'm learning to adapt to.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping that they say it's all very well doing talks, because as we know, it opens things up. You can connect with people across the world and they don't have to travel, but being in the same room, you know, is priceless for me. And I wanted to get onto, well, firstly, the reason I first heard about you was someone suggested reading Wake Up. Your book, you know, escaping a life on autopilot, and a lot of that comes from with the Whole Man Academy. You know, we set this up in 2018 to help men do life better, encourage them to get together to talk, but also to look at your health, your fitness, you know, your mindset, all the different things that make up a man. And we kept finding that guys similarly said they felt like they were sleepwalking through life. Especially those. Primarily the guys between 34 and 45 who are professional, maybe have got kids and have got a desk job and are just feeling like they're sleepwalking. So I just wondered, like with that book, I mean, we're going to go on to Upping Your Elvis, but with Wake Up, you know, what was it like writing that, and where do you get all your ideas from?
Well, look, I mean, I get all my ideas from the experiences that we have, right? So I'm not, you know, one of these kind of intellectuals who do lots of research, and I'm certainly not academic, so that's not my thing. But I've worked for 20 odd years helping some of the biggest and best companies get better at what they do. And by doing that a lot, you just start to pick things up about what drives people, what makes them tick, what makes them extraordinary, what makes them, you know, find tougher days versus great ones. And one of the things I just noticed is that, you know, we're just these creatures of habit, aren't we? And, you know, I ask my clients, I say, "So how's this week been?" And they go, "I have no idea," because literally they're banging from one meeting to the next. It all becomes a bit Groundhog Day. And I know that, you know, for me to feel alive, I need to shake up my energy. And one of the best ways of doing that is to get off of autopilot and become more conscious. So it's purely through touch and feel. And then, you know, when you start to scratch the surface a little bit, you understand how many people suffer from this kind of, as you say, almost sleepwalking through life. And I think it's a terrible waste of what is an amazing opportunity to be on this planet. So that's why I wrote that one. How did I find writing it? Well, my writing process is probably a little bit different to most, Anthony. So the first book I wrote, I just went and locked myself in a cottage up in Blakeney in Norfolk, and wrote it in 5 days. And since then, I've done the same principle. I work out what the kind of structure is and the synopsis, and I sell the kind of book proposal, and I do a load of research, but I actually write. It's never taken me more than 7 days to write it. And the reason being is, if I were to sit down and do an hour a day, it would be rubbish, truth be told, because that's just not the way I think, you know. And I think a lot of us, we like to have depth of focus for the right stuff, and we need to create that in our lives. And therefore, you know, I get up very early. I write very, very hard for as long as I can, and then I go off and walk the dog and muck about for the rest of the day. Come back to it the next day, and then actually, you know, when I did wake up, when I did Shine, I did 38,000 words in 6 days doing it that way. And I know if I'd have done a little bit every day, 5 years later, I wouldn't have finished. So that's my process.
It's always interesting when you talk to, you know, into different guys that have written books, and some of them, you know, always say you have the ebbs and flows of focus, and it's very hard to say, like, you have 1 hour, you're going to write a book now, and you're like, you know, your energy's up, your energy's down. So it's that's why I love asking the guys who've written, and not just books, but, you know, I loved Wake Up, and that's why I was so interested to read Upping Your Elvis. But with going on autopilot, how do you kind of stay, what's the word, kind of motivated and energized yourself? Is it through just morning routine as well as everything else, or the people around you?
Oh, all of those things. So look, morning routine is a game changer for me. So so that makes a huge difference. One of the things that we did to get into that book was we did 2 years worth of energy experiments, actually 2.5, where we got some of the world's experts to coach us in how they get their energy right. And we did different things for a month, right? And we did all sorts of stuff. But one of the things that we did was we did the whole Wim Hof Iceman stuff, the cold water immersion.
Yeah.
And I am such a fan of that. I've gone nuts on it. So I built a pond. I'm in it every morning. And in the summer, when it's too warm, I've got a refrigerated tub. You know, that's how much I love it, which is a bit too much, I think, Anthony.
That's good.
But as part of my routine, you know, that's what I do in the morning to make sure that I am, you know, alive, you know, connected to who I am and the world in which we're living, and indeed what I want to do that day. So that is massive for me. But you just mentioned people. Relational energy is massive, isn't it? I mean, who you surround yourself with is who you become. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to hang out with, you know, the freaks and the weirdos, the creatives, the energetic, the ones who are positive as well. I find the older I become, the less tolerance I have for negativity, truth be told. Because there are those people that can see opportunity and make stuff happen, and there are those that moan about it. And I know it's the former I want to play with. So I'm very deliberate about that.
Yeah, that's trying to think. It was a couple of podcasts ago where we were talking to a chap about, you know, similar, you know, kind of the average of the 5 people you hang around with. And I said, in life, I learned to slowly, because it's not easy, but slowly like delete the people that are the mood hoover. You know, you realize every time you have a conversation, you start with, oh, the weather's crap and this, and something's happened. You're like, look, you know, we all say it's you know, it's fine to discussing, but you're like, you know, in short bursts, as opposed to it being if you're spending all your time with someone.
Yeah. And look, there's a load of science on negativity, right? And what we know is if you have a negative friend, you are 100% more likely to be negative yourself. You know, it just rubs off on you, and you'll die younger. You have heart disease. You know, there's nothing good to be said for negativity, unless, you know, you work for an insurance company and you're, you know, a risk assessor. That's about it, really. Or you're about to jump off a cliff. Then it's useful to be negative. But apart from that, I can't think of one reason to do it. And yet it's so prevalent. You know, we're designed to be negative, so I get that. But we can do something about it. So I like the folk that have. I like the folk that say, yeah, come on, let's do it now. Because it makes such a difference to the way everyone shows up, right?
Yeah, having that. Well, a chap I recently interviewed had written a short book called Yes, You Can. And, you know, if you spent half your life just saying to people, you know, whatever it is they were trying to achieve, yes, you can, as opposed to, yeah, but, you know, your family don't like it, you haven't got too much money, all the different things. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking there's one other industry at the moment that could do with losing their negativity, which be the mainstream media. You know, with the fear porn, because you just turn everything
fear
on.
porn. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And the problem is, so you know, they're very aware of our psychology, right? So our brain latches onto negativity like Velcro, but, you know, positivity like Teflon. And the reason being is that, you know, part of our survival mechanism is to see potential danger. Therefore, we get overexcited about anything negative. And guess what? That's every news feed, isn't it? I mean, you know, has there been any good news in the last 18 months, Anthony? I don't know.
I mean, it's well hidden if there has been any.
I haven't seen any of it. I mean, we've got COVID, we've got, politics, we've got wars, we've got famines, we've got climate change. Everything is a disaster. And if that's not a disaster, some chat show host has just created some more disasters, if anyone cares. But, we just don't see anything good, do we? It's nuts.
No, that's the saying, isn't it? If it bleeds, it leads. And that's why I'm a big believer in, for the last kind of 8 months, I don't read newspapers anymore. I don't watch normal TV anymore. And, I'm noticing the more and more people I get around that are, for me, I call successful being, living a life of impact and freedom and kind of doing what they love. So many of them say, I don't read the newspapers, or I dip in and out, but I leave it all alone. And I was like, wish someone had told me that about 20 years ago.
The same. I get the week and I scan that, and that's my news, just so I know what's going on. I think we have to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. I do feel very sorry. And I know a lot of people who do this who've got a news feed on constantly in the background. And I think it has a very oppressive, impact on your life.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that you just don't know what to believe anyway. So why, I remember years ago, I read a front page news report about, a presidential meeting in London. I flew over to New York, read exactly the same report, completely opposite story. And you just go, well, so we're filling our head full of negativity. Oh, and half of it isn't even believable. So it's, what is the point? What is the point?
No.
Let's create our own news. That's what I say. Make it some happy stuff.
That's it. And that's the thing. I now, I encourage people to fill their time, if they need to fill it, with, reading the Upping Your Elvis books, Wake Up, and, or podcasts and things that are, inspiring and kind of, just it's thought-provoking content. And let's talk about Upping Your Elvis. Yeah. And I wrote down, so I didn't try to remember it and completely butcher it, but helping you understand what makes you tick, liberating you from the restrictive systems of traditional business and opening your eyes to a new way of working and living, which I thought was great. So tell us, for those, I'm so lucky I've read it in the last 2 days. And my partner's like, are you going to put that down? I was like, I'm just rereading it again, just a little bit. But tell us a little bit about, for you, what was the kind of motivation behind writing it?
Well, so, first off, the name, Upping Your Elvis, it's inspired by Bono. He used to ask a great question, which is, who's Elvis around here? And I love that, because I think everyone needs a bit more Elvis in their lives, and we can all bring a bit more to play. So that's why it's Upping Your Elvis. And then the reason for the book is that, quite simply, we're not designed for business. We're just not. We're designed to be hunter-gatherers. We spent 2 million years on this planet as that, up until 12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about how we've developed, we haven't really changed a great deal over 50,000 years as far as our kind of mental faculties are concerned. So we're designed for that life. Business is a very recent design, and it's changing incredibly quickly, and we cannot keep up. And I think one of the problems is that we try and make ourselves fit business. And I think that's just a terrible mistake, because, as I said, we are ancient. What we should do is make business fit us.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm deeply passionate about. And but you can't do that unless you understand what makes you tick and what your design is. So that was the inspiration for the book, because my foundation on this is, it's all about energy. If you get your energy right, work is easy and fun. If you don't, it's a horrible nightmare. So, let's get that energy working better for us. And to do that, we need to know where we've come from.
Yeah. And I know there was so much of the book. I actually went out to my partner, because she's a nutritionist. So she's very much, about getting back to the natural things we used to do many, many years ago, like what we're eating and how we're sleeping and all the different things. And I was like, what I said to her was, I think that reading that book would make you a better leader as well if it's someone like a guy in the office space. And I was trying to go back to when I worked in the city. I was, working on a broking or trading floor with 300 pretty much all other guys, and you're there for 200 hours a month sitting at your desk. And I used to fall asleep in the afternoons. And it was funny, because I would say to people, why shouldn't you have a little nap when your energy's low, if nothing's going on? Because then 10 minutes later, I'm kind of energized and ready to go again. Whereas if you sit there, and we've all done it, we just, slowly, and then you reach for another coffee. I think that's one of those big things. And one of the things you said was about the way we eat today is killing us. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts on it.
It's just a travesty, isn't it? I mean, if you look at what people consume on a daily basis, it's junk. It really is junk. Yeah. And I understand why. We've got a lot of mouths to feed on this planet, and actually people don't have enough money, and therefore what we do is we go for the lowest kind of investment in pounds for calories, and as long as it's got some taste behind it, people are happy. But it's just a very, very naive way of feeding people, because obviously the impacts on health are just terrible. I love what Boy George said, which is, if it's got a name, don't eat it. And I tend to believe in that. It's I understand we can't all do this, so I'm talking from a very privileged point of view. I'm also going for the ideal, right? So there are people who obviously can't feed themselves by getting locally sourced stuff, and I completely get that, and you've got to do what you've got to do. But if you get choice, and the vast majority of people in this country have choice, then you've got to get locally sourced seasonal ingredients. You've got to cook it yourself. Ready-made stuff is rubbish. And you've got to learn how to make sure that you get, the right kind of balance of that. And I think that, a lot of us are just so time poor. We don't care. We just get our calories from anywhere. And it's having an impact.
Yeah. And it's so important because there's so many different points to this, but the way I look at it now is also we've been conditioned to be, we won't wait for anything at all. Everything gets delivered to our door, and the food, if our food's 5 minutes late, then people will complain. And I was thinking that goes back to now, like you said, people are time poor, and if they are time poor, then you've got to ask a question of like, why? Is it because they're working too much, or they're spending too much time scrolling on their phone? And I wonder how do you navigate with yourself, family, staff, about trying to get the balance between being productive and, I say, being busy, being productive and getting everything done, and actually finding that space yourself to kind of just sometimes do nothing or just have fun.
And I suffer. Okay, so I'm itchy. I'm one of these people that has to do things all the time. And in fact, my kids actually said, "Do you know what, Dad? It's not much fun having a weekend with you because we can't relax." Because I'll be like, I'll go mow the lawn, or I'll go do that. I like to do things. But they're not all worky things. They're quite restful things. But I tend to be. I don't sit down a lot. That's the truth. However, what I am very aware of is that we often waste our time. So there's some amazing research around focus and how you use it better. And the research suggests that the best performers in any walk of life spend between 3.5 and 4 hours a day working. And when you read that, you go, well, how does that work? Well, it's simple. They do it with total commitment and focus,
right? And
they don't get distracted by stuff. And actually, I don't know many people who managed to do that. So I got into practicing, and I found that actually I have a sweet spot in the morning. That's where my deep focus tends to lie. And I make sure I crack through the most important stuff then. And if you do that, then you can spend your afternoons doing other stuff like this, chatting to you, for example. So my energy in the afternoon is good for this type of stuff. But in the morning, that's all my thinking time, and that's what I have to protect. And I think most people don't have the awareness or the discipline to do that. And they also love the dopamine kick of scrolling through social feeds, which is it's purely about, well, look at this. It's like crack, isn't it? It really is. And when you start to understand that by playing a few tunes on it, and actually one of our energy experiments was understanding how to manage digital, you start to understand what a time waste it is. And it actually, again, it's a bit like the news. It gives you nothing positive in your life. I mean, it really doesn't. I understand that some people get a bit more of a connection to their friends they don't see because they live abroad. I get that benefit. And I get when there's an earthquake, you can see if people are safe. I get that bit. But the rest of it's absolute bollocks, isn't it?
It's I wrote down the word notifications because that for me, you kind of just drop the wording because you realize, if you think for your phone, I've got 3 different email addresses, you've got all the different things on there. You've got Telegram, you've got WhatsApp, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got Twitter, you've got, and even when you go on there to maybe reply to an email, if you haven't turned it all off, it's so clever at just tickling you, and you go, oh fuck, I'll just have a look at this, and then 5 minutes later you go
in a rabbit hole.
I can't remember what I was doing.
No, it's true, and we obviously we turned off our notifications some time ago because we realised that one of the other top tips I got was if you look at the stuff that really gets you into that mode, that gets you totally distracted, stick on the back page.
Yes.
I found, because you can get your screen reports and see how you're done. Stick it on the back page stopped me about 80% of the time. So my usage dropped 80% as a result of just moving it. So I couldn't see it. Simple, but
there's a little golden nugget for people. Just move it a few pages over.
Exactly. It really helps. So yeah, I mean, it's, and look, I don't want to turn back time, right? Because technology is amazing and I'm a big fan of it. And actually it can solve some of the biggest problems we got on the planet. So I don't want to turn back time, but we just got to learn how to use it better.
Yeah.
Because actually our design is not for that, right? And actually all those lovely, Silicon Valley folk know exactly how we're programmed, and that's why we find it so irresistible, right?
Yeah, it's the thing where you get your you get your screen time sent to you, and I know I use it for work as well as you might watch stuff, but I know it's weeks ago. I mean, back I think now just after Christmas, where one of the days it was like 4 hours 12 minutes, and I was like, I wonder how much of that time was really actually, doing something useful or productive. Not that you can't enjoy stuff on your phone, but you just think, wow, like those times you get caught down a little rabbit hole and it's, oh, look, Liverpool have scored and let's check something out.
Yeah.
And
easily done.
That's why with your book, this is what I found important about, Upping Your Elvis, was it gives you lots of short, thoughtful ideas that are achievable, because I've read some books that are quite deep and meaningful, but you read them and then you can't remember what you've just read in the last paragraph, which there's the old saying, is knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. So if you've read it and you can't remember what it was, it's useless, to be honest. So that was one of those things. And I know you'd said, like, we're primed to think we're in danger on a daily or hourly basis. And with our cortisol levels and everything kind of pumping through our veins. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, about how it's affecting people.
Yeah, so this all goes down to the fact that we've got this negativity bias, right? So again, just the reason being is, back when we were hunter-gatherers, survival is our number one priority, right? So what we've learned to do is, if we see a bush rustling in the distance, we don't go over to it and investigate. We get our spear, we get in our cave and go, it's going to eat me, right? So 9 times out of 10, it's Anthony coming back with some berries from a forage and yippee, we got breakfast. But the one time that it's a carnivorous beast, I'm delighted I acted in the negative way. And obviously, when you do that, you have a fight, flight, freeze response. You're flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, and we live to fight another day, right? So that's our design. Now, obviously, we're not going to get chased down by beasties too often these days. So we've got the same programming, but we're not reacting to that. We're reacting to anything new. Anything new and different. It could be a new person. It could be, a new idea. It could be, COVID. It could be the news, right? Anything new, we can't help but go, it's going to eat me. And we react in that way. So most people are basically living with a constant stress response.
Yeah.
And obviously, eventually over time, that energetically just wears you down. So, there's a lot of people at the moment who literally are running from one fear and danger to the next, and that is their life. And it's an almost impossible place to live, because it's just not good for any part of your well-being.
You just said it, I guess it's energy sapping. And one of the things I'm seeing more of, especially in the last, the usage of Zoom. I mean, Zoom was around before all lockdowns happened, but most people didn't really ever use it because they were face to face. But I'm seeing now, and maybe you can talk a bit more about that, about people that are saying they're on, Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call, like 7 or 8 hours a day. And I'm like, I wonder because you're not having any actual, you and I aren't talking face to face. We're looking at a screen and roughly eye to eye. But I just wonder what the impact you think of, that, again, there's always benefits of it because you can talk to people and, you don't have to do the traveling. But the exhaustion I'm seeing of people that are kind of zoomed out, basically.
Yeah, well, look, it's a different type of interaction, isn't it? I mean, when we're in a room, we tend to relax a little bit. We roll around each other's energy. Actually, there's some payoff for being together.
Yeah.
Whereas on the screen, it's clinical. And what I've noticed is people are just incredibly transactional. So they just crack on with the work. And what they do, because they don't have to go from meeting room to the next, they'll literally go till 11 o'clock, where the next one starts at 11 o'clock. And I had this. I was talking to one of my Nike clients, right, who are all about movement and fitness. I said, "How's it been in lockdown?" They said, "Well, I'm on the screen from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day." And I'm going, "You're what?
Great.
How can you do that?" And we're designed to move, right? We can't actually process unless we move, because guess what? As hunter-gatherers, the food didn't come to us; we went to get it. So it's baked into our physiology, right? When we move, everything works. Our minds work better, our emotions process better, we feel good about who we are, we've got more connection to the world. We are designed for that. If you are static on a screen, you're just cutting that out. So you have to make it work better for you. And one of the things also that obviously we're missing with the screen time is that when we're in the office, we have just about 40-ish interactions per week where we bump into somebody, getting a coffee, we have a chat, and these informal interactions are important for creativity and insight, but they're incredibly important for relational energy, right? And when we're on screen, that drops to about 7. Okay, so we've suddenly missed all that human connection about the stuff we would call life, rather than just the job, the work, the thing we have to deliver. So actually, whilst we're on screen, we're just bang, 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 bang. There's no respite from it because it's all about objectives, deliverables, moving on, bang. And no one gets to kick back and just be themselves and actually soak up a bit of humanity. And that's tough. So all the clients I'm working with at the moment will say, well, how do we get that back? How do you get that into your day when you're on screen? And how do you make sure you're not on it all day long? Because that's the last thing you want to be doing. It's just not the way that we're built. There's this weird thing that goes on with us, which is, we tend to think that an hour, at 9 a.m. is the same as an hour at 4 p.m. We see our time as equal increments of 60 minutes. My 9 a.m. is nothing like my 4 p.m. It's nothing like it, And to think that actually, if I just segment it all, I can do equal things all through the day, it's just rubbish, isn't it? And what we've got to learn to do is instead of manage our time, we've got to manage our energy. And that's really what the book's all about.
Yeah, no, I wish I'd have known a lot of this stuff many years ago, because not just for me, but again, the guys that you saw working in the office, as you say, you had to stay at your desk because that was, if you're at a desk, you're making money. So you couldn't go out for lunch unless you went out with a client. So, there was the old story of or generally of us guys, you'd be like, I'm going to pop out and grab a sandwich because, you've been in from 6:45 in the morning on phones and looking at lots of numbers on screens, and it's taxing on your energy. And people say, but you're just sitting down, and you're like, I'm thinking the whole time. And then you'd say, I need to go and get a sandwich. And so I say, don't worry, because the desk junior will go and get it for you. And you're like, no, right. I need to get out. And like you say, you'd come back and you'd feel refreshed instead of eating at your desk and, dropping some, egg mayonnaise in your keyboard. So I'm always trying to say to people,
and you have a lunch break for a reason, right? I mean, it's a chance for you to regenerate. Your lunch break is the equivalent of 5.5 hours, 5.5 weeks of holiday a year. Yeah, wow. And people just work through it. But but obviously, if you had an extra 5.5 weeks holiday, imagine what your energy would be like. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah. And people just, they flush it. They're just like, oh, it's not important, and it's ridiculous. And I know that I've got loads of clients who, they've got offices in America, they've got offices in Asia, and therefore the only time they can work together is at lunch. So therefore, it's a prime time. I get that, but then take your break on either side of it. You still need it, because otherwise, you're just going to be flagging.
And that's, the flagging. I always think it comes down to, you've got lack of energy, but then you have a bit of lack of motivation, and you probably don't make the right decisions when you're kind of lacking those things. And I wanted to ask you about, the different clients that you've worked with, but what's the common thing at the moment that they're coming to you for you to help them with?
Well, it's always about behavior, really. It's about, they'll address it in different ways. Like, we need to be more productive. People are working on the wrong stuff. We've lost a bit of our mojo. Right. We're doing a culture change. There's always something going on. But ultimately, what they want from me is they want people to show up with a big smile on their face, loving who they are, loving what they do, feeling more confident about taking some risk and experimenting. And nearly all of that is about simple behavioral tweaks. And I'm a huge fan of it. If you look at all the big change programs that have been delivered over the last 20, 30 years by the big consultancies like McKinsey and Bain and all those lot, very few of them really work. And actually, it depends which research you read, but it's between 75 and 85%, because they change everything in one big go, and it's very complicated. And the human psyche just goes, scary. I'm going to revert to norm. Yeah. Whereas I'm a big believer in, if you can get them to do just little things a bit better every day that show a benefit to them and the business, then it will stick, right? So, if you just think about how many meetings you have in a day, if you can make them 10% better because actually you start them right and you end them right, that's a huge impact amplified across the business, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can make sure that everybody gets up in the morning knowing what their priority is for the day, yeah, and then they finish their day knowing what they've delivered, that's a massive impact across the business. So I do simple little things that are very sustainable, very human, give the individual benefit as well as the business, and then I find they stick.
I always think that's what pretty much every company I work for could have done with, is a bit of trying to understand more about their employees, not just how can they make us more money. And ultimately, often it's it goes in full circle. A happy, kind of content employee probably is more productive and ultimately maybe stays at the company longer, and you don't have the employees leaving. But I wondered, when a company comes to you, I guess it depends on the size, but kind of where do you start? Do you kind of drill down onto where they are? Do you talk to management? Do you talk to all the staff?
So, I mean, I do have a lot of clients that say, can you come in and do an assessment and get some insights and, look at, what's going on and do some focus groups. But you know what? When I do that, I get exactly the same news every time. I mean, what you do get that's specific is certain language patterns. Yeah.
Right.
And you get some stories that are really useful, and you understand a little bit more about what's going on within their culture. And that is useful. But ultimately, we're all people, right? So therefore we all have the same stuff going on. We all have that negativity bias. We all got stuck on autopilot. Yeah. We all have problems with our focus because that's our design. And therefore, you're not going to go into a company and they go, oh, they don't have a focus problem, because they're all people, so they will, right? So if you fundamentally boil it down to our design as hunter-gatherers, we're all going to be the same, right? Now we can dress it up in different ways. We can make it culturally specific. We can do things that make them feel as if it's very much about who they are. But ultimately, you're going to find it incredibly similar anywhere you go, you go. And actually, it is interesting. I do have some clients who say, oh, no, we're different. We're different. And you just have to go, yeah.
Is it harder when you talk about dealing with companies like, let's say Nike or those type of companies compared to a smaller group, is it harder because if they've got such a deep history, but such a huge company? Because surely, I'm guessing here, but creating change when it's such a grand scale, like you say, takes a lot more thought maybe than when you've got a smaller group of people.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a lot easier. I mean, the smallest gig I've ever done, I did an agency that was about 70 people. We got an ROI within 10 days. Right. You can't do that with a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It's too complicated. So but then what's interesting is with the small company, you can be a lot more flexible. You can go with the flow, you can tailor things and because actually you can be a bit more fleet of foot. With a big company, that's where you really need to be simple, clear. Right. You need to keep banging home the same message, 10 different ways, but the same message. And you have to hold, sustaining structures around them to make sure it's supported. So actually all the discipline comes out when you're doing it at scale. Because if it's not engaging, it's not entertaining, if it's not fun, they're just going to just move on, right? Yeah. It's as simple as that. So you've got to really appeal to the humanity bit to make that work. But that's the fun challenge. Yeah. Culture change used to be quite a scientific thing. There's a lot of amazing boffins out there and lots of professors who knew how to pull the right levers. Now it's freaking Netflix, right? Yeah. If I'm not entertaining people, if I'm not getting people to engage in it because there's something in it for them and they're excited about it, it's over, right? Yeah. And that's a very interesting place to work. Now, there's always going to be a place for the professors because there's going to be companies like that who like their numbers and their science, but they won't phone me.
Yeah, I always think back to when I worked in different companies and they'd bring someone in to talk to you, and it wasn't necessarily about, very rarely in those days was it any motivational speaker or anybody that was helping you think differently. It might have been something to do with compliance or financial regulations, but you could tell within probably, they might not have even got started, but you could tell by the way they spoke as they got set up and the way they kind of moved around that you'd think this is going to be a glaze over event. And for you, do you go into the companies yourself? Do you have a team of people around you, go in as a group?
Yeah, so I've got a very small team actually. I've got a business partner, Jim Lusty, who is a legend, who is the most positive man on the planet and has amazing energy. And we deliver, I'd say, 90-ish% of the work. We've got a team of associates, all people I've worked with for at least 20 years, who are very similar. But I don't have teams of people to deliver it for me. I did have that in my last business, but I like to do the work, and I don't want to just do new business and then go, over to somebody else now. You'll never see me again. It's because that's not what it's about. It's about this, right? The connection. So I do work. We do a lot of digital stuff now. So, obviously to have the impact that we want at scale, we do lots of digital workshops, which can be, bought as a package. And actually the results of them are amazing. We just had about 800 people go through our new one, and people's energy was up 43% within 20 days. So you can actually get incredible impact by doing that. But again, it's a show, right? You need to make it entertaining. It needs to be fast. They need to get an impact immediately. If it's vaguely tricky, they'll switch off. So you've got to think about how you package things in that way. But if you do it in a way that's totally human and people look forward to it, then you can have incredible results that way.
Some good advice for anybody that's in companies, delivering a presentation or a meeting, because it is that of, I always thought you should tell people if they could just put their phones down, because there's nothing worse than halfway through a talk and you look, and although I was guilty of that, I was doing a talk last year, only to probably about 20, 25 people. And there was a guy at the back of the room, and after about 10 minutes, your brain starts playing tricks on you, because you see him and he was going, and I thought, he hates it. He hates me. He thinks it's rubbish. And every time I looked, he was just scrolling on his phone. And at the end, he was the first one to come up and say, I've taken so many notes on my phone. That was really good.
Yeah. That's the problem. He's just connecting with you on LinkedIn. That's what he was doing. Yeah.
And I was just like, it's so funny how your brain can play tricks on you when you're talking to big groups. And now talking, the Whole Man Academy is all about encouraging guys to, to make sure that they've got someone in their life that they can talk to. And that hasn't got to be because they've got mental health issues, but it's a business idea, or, just generally kind of having your football team, or be it your dad or a friend. And I know you'd written, if we don't express our emotions, we're suppressing them. And that's not great for our health, unsurprisingly, because suppressed emotions tend to pop back up, often in surprising and negative ways. What about for yourself, through the years of the companies you worked at and what you're doing and kind of writing the books? Who have you found that you go to talk to?
That's good. So, number one, I've got a coach I've been working with for almost 20 years. I speak to every week, and it's invaluable. 20 years of the same person, but I still find massive value in it. So that's really important. It's really important to have, friends that you can be completely unfiltered and honest with. And I'm super lucky. I've got the most amazing support network of incredible friends who are great entrepreneurs, business people, who've done incredible things, and they get stuff. And I can pick up the phone to them, and they will drop everything to talk to me, as I would for them. And that is super, super useful. And then actually, the talk it out approach that I've launched as a tech startup, I use every week, every single week. And actually, at the moment, I'm probably using it every day. So that's a very simple way of making sure I'm processing my emotions, and getting into my subconscious. And I find that just a game changer.
Well, let's talk about that, because I was really interested to see that. I know and I have no idea where the saying came from, but it would do someone good even if they just spoke to a lamppost. Just talking, doesn't matter what's coming back. And often you can find the person that you're talking to might know what to say back to you, or they say the wrong thing and it just pisses you off. So tell us a bit about the app. I was so interested to firstly hear about it and then to read more about it.
Yeah. So basically, I came up with it as a creative technique. It's called Talk It Out. I came out with the creative technique in 2005 when I wrote my first book. And what it's very good at doing is getting you out of your conscious story into your subconscious. Because anything you work on, you have a conscious story in your brain. And it would be the story I'd tell you if you said, so how's the next book project going on? You go, well, I'm trying to get a publisher and blah blah blah. Now, as long as you're telling that story, you're trapped in that 5% of your processing.
Yeah.
So what it does is, just by walking and talking, is it gets through that story so other stuff can bubble up from your subconscious. A bit like taking a cork from a bottle of champagne, so that other stuff literally bubbles up.
Yeah.
And we taught it as a creative technique, and we just noticed that people coming back with ideas and insights, but they just felt better. So we researched it with the University of Bristol, and lo and behold, it reduces anxiety and it ups happiness. And the way it works is very simple. What you think is what you feel. But 95% of your thinking is subconscious. And therefore, most people have no idea whether they're having a good day versus a bad. That's the truth of it, right? And we've all had those days, haven't we? We've gone, why am I so pissed off? I am pissed off, but I don't know why.
Why?
Exactly. And this will help you understand why. And therefore, when you understand why, you get a choice, because then you can do something with it, right? It's as simple as that. And it's a very simple walking, talking technique. Now, there's 450 million people on this planet with a diagnosable mental or emotional health challenge right now. 300 million won't talk to another human being. And I just think that's a travesty. I just think that's just not right.
Yeah.
But what we do know is they're 5 times more likely to talk to a machine than a person, which is frightening, but that's what it is. So that's why we built the app, so that on everyone's phone, they can have it for free. They can talk into it and they can process what's going on for them. So they get more clarity on why they feel the way they do. And therefore they can get rid of that anxiety and feel better about who they are. It's as simple as that.
I think it's a great idea. And, we, again, started the Whole Man Academy back in 2018. And it's encouraging guys to get together to talk, as well as, giving them those little golden nuggets to do life better. And one of those things was about, some of the guys that I've done either a bit of coaching for or just exchange emails with across the world now. So we've got guys in Canada, in the US, in Germany, and in Scotland, all these far-flung places. But often a lot of them found that they either didn't have anybody to talk to, and there's a difference when you mate at work, you just talk about football and usual bollocks. But also some of them, that they didn't have anybody to talk to that would actually listen and could understand. And there's that great saying, I never remember who, but 80% of people don't care about your problems and 20% are glad you've got them.
That's true.
and you go and talk to someone and you try and explain what's going on in your head, and they're just like, oh well. And you're like, oh, I feel a bit silly. So that's why I think that app, I know I'll be putting it on our e-letter to say to guys, look, even if they don't think it's for them, it might be that they know someone else.
Yeah.
And you never know with these things. So from your first idea of it, when was it finally launched? Like, how long did it take? I'm always interested in these ideas, because you can think about it for years.
No, of course. Well, look, I mean, I first came up with the idea for creativity in 2005. Last January, so a year and a bit ago, I was in Colombia hanging out with a bunch of shaman, having a rather good time, and doing some rather interesting journeying. And at that point, I just went, I've just got to launch this.
You're going to have to tell me about that, Chris. You can't just skip over shaman and...
Yeah, well, I was invited. That was really cool. I was invited to go over there and have a few days of spiritual kind of experiences with these shaman. And I'm the only Westerner they've ever invited. It was amazing.
Wow.
But it did involve ayahuasca, which is definitely a medicine.
Tell us, I'll tell you why I'll say this, that's why I think I said to you before we started recording, people could say, can you send through all your questions? And I'm like, no, because we don't know where it's going to go. And then you mention something like that. And I'm so interested in it and how different people's experiences are. So talk to me about ayahuasca and your experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hardcore. So no one spoke English, and I don't speak Spanish, so I was completely stuck. And it was purely an experience that you just had to immerse yourself in.
Yeah.
And it's hardcore. I mean, it's a very hardcore thing. Everyone, I was there with this particular village, and all their elders came out. People, they flew in about 3 or 4 shaman from around Colombia. It's an extraordinary experience, and I was very, very lucky, and I had a lot of gratitude for it. But it's hard work. Everyone's throwing up everywhere. I didn't, but I wish I did, because it's quite hard. And it's definitely, it felt like I had the cleaners in, if that makes sense. It felt like I had a dino rod into my head, and it cleaned me out. It wasn't a pleasant experience at all. But here's the thing, and this is what I'm fascinated by. For about 40 days afterwards, I didn't have one negative thought, not one attachment, not one judgment, nothing. And it was as if I was reborn as far as my head was concerned. And it's extraordinary, because actually in that place, all you have is happiness. All you are is present.
Yeah.
All you're capable of is doing interesting work. And actually, it's something that we can all, I think, access, that particular state, without taking ayahuasca. And that's my fascination. And for me, talking out helps me get somewhere towards that. It's not painful at all. It's quite a pleasant process. And it might not be quite as profound as that experience, but it can get me to a place where actually the noise in my head stops, because actually I understand what the voices are saying. I know where I'm at, and I'm clear. And therefore I can actually engage in what's in front of me. And if I can bring that to other people on the planet, then that is my purpose. That is why I'm here.
That is priceless. Was that your first time of having a go with ayahuasca? And I'm so interested to hear. Some people they did it once and they didn't feel like they needed it. Other people are like, I'm not saying they want to do it too often, but they felt like I need to a bit more of this.
Yeah.
And
I can completely understand it. I mean, some people really enjoy the process. I haven't been back. It's not that I won't go back, but I don't feel the need to. That night I had it 3 times. I mean, nobody else had it 3 times. I was the Western nutbag who went, yeah, all right, I'll do it 3 times. And therefore I had quite an experience. But I'm just interested in what can change your psyche, what can help you become more conscious. And the research around mental health and psychedelics is extraordinary. I mean, in 10 years' time, it's going to be very commonplace. And I think it's a move in the right direction because, let's face it, giving kids drugs to get them over depression and anxiety is not the way to look after our next generation. We have to think differently about how we do that. And if there are things that we can learn from nature, I'm all over it.
Yeah. At the moment, there's a lot of talk about giving kids drugs in certain forms, and I'm very much of a let's, kids. Kids are born perfect, and then they're kind of wrapped in shit from all their experiences and the television programming and the schools and all the different stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting one to delve deeper into.
I agree, and I don't have the answer for everyone, but if I can help a few kids not have to do that because they can process using Talk It Out, then I'm onto a winner. But anyway, to your question though, then I borrowed a load of money last summer, so it's only last summer, and look, this is what it looks like. The app is out in the store now. We're testing it with the National Health Service as we speak. The results look really good. Microsoft have just said they want to partner with us and put it into Teams. So that would be 149 million people that'll have access to it.
Very small.
Yeah. And Coca-Cola want to test it. I mean, so everyone's going, yes, we can see that this makes sense. So in a very short period of time, actually, we've got to a stage where things are getting quite exciting. But my ambition is this: I want to be able to make it available to anyone on the planet for free. Yeah. To do that, I need to be able to pay for it because they're very expensive free apps. So we'll just have a little kind of premium version that a lot of businesses will be signing up to. And actually, one of the things we've been doing recently is we've just tested it where what we get people to do is they do a Talk It Out at the start of their day. They do their morning routine and they do a Talk It Out just to get clear on what their big thing is for the day, what their focus should be. And then at the end of the day, they do a Talk It Out before they finish work for 5 minutes just to see what they've learned. And within 10 days, their energy goes up, their sense of control goes up, but they are 3 times more likely to have a positive impact. And they are 3 times more likely to have to use their talents. And they're 10 times more likely to have a positive impact every day. Wow. So what I love is it gives you well-being, but it also makes you more productive. And I don't know a business that doesn't want that combination.
Yeah. No, thanks. No more productivity.
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's that, for so long I've been trying to, either my partner with the nutrition that she does with people to remind people you can't just take a pill and everything be fixed. It needs to be, a daily, about what you're eating, what you're thinking, what you're consuming in the media and around you, the chemicals you put on your skin, the language you give to yourself, kind of sometimes beating yourself up over it. And that led me on to, I wrote it down after talking out, was decluttering. And I know I'd seen one of your videos on decluttering. I mean, I think your mind, but even like an office, because about your workspace and space to think. And I just wondered you could talk about decluttering and the impact you think it could have for people.
Yeah, so this is an unusual one. So one of our energy experiments for a month was about decluttering. And, a lot of people feel like it's changed their lives. So we were like, well, we've got to give it a go. And actually what I've realized is I'm terrible at decluttering physically, because I just, I will put that off forever because it feels like homework. But when I do it, it does feel amazing. It does feel as if you are renewed. So there's definitely something interesting about that. But I do a lot of decluttering in my life. I will go through my diary and rip things out if it's not useful anymore. I will not do things that are today not relevant, but they were when I went in. I think that's a discipline. I think, you're talking about friends and about the fact that you get rid of the negative ones. We never declutter our friendship groups, do we? And yet, we're always meeting new people, but we never get rid of the old ones. And actually, you need space. Right? You need space. So you've got to declutter them as well, right? So I think this is all about just consciousness. This is about saying, what do I need in my life today, and I really need, versus the stuff that I've just got knocking about. Because actually, when you're on autopilot, you want everything, don't you? Because when you're on autopilot, you're back into survival mode where you know, if you're a hunter gatherer and you had enough logs for the fire for tonight, you go and get a few more for tomorrow, wouldn't you? Because the more chance for survival. But we've got everything we need. We don't need more shit in our lives. But we're constantly accumulating, aren't we? So I think it's really good discipline just to cut through it and say, actually, what do I need?
Yeah. And I tell you what I love about that. I bet because we've kind of posed a similar kind of question when we try and do our weekly letter to guys, which again, you know, goes out to guys around the world. So it's interesting. You know, we've got a real mixture of guys that might be in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and then some guys are in their 20s. So sometimes the emails I get back will be so interesting because one guy will have had a huge amount of wisdom and he's been through a lot of life. Other guys just starting out. And you always kind of, you know, you pick up the people around you that you're hanging around with. And like you said earlier, I try and say to people about not having, you know, or not allowing too much of your energy to get sucked away by those kind of either negative people or the jobs you do as well.
Definitely.
And that led me on to your TED talk where you spoke about, or you know, when you got people to do the paper aeroplanes.
Oh yeah.
And part of that was about, you know, kind of taking action and, you know, testing and getting instant feedback on things. And I wrote about demanding feedback. So could you tell us what it was like with the TED talk and why did you get people to throw paper aeroplanes at you on the stage?
Yeah. So basically, you know, most of my clients, if I give them a challenge, what they do is they lock themselves behind closed doors and debate it with loads of data. And I just think that's not the way to learn or to grow or to come up with better ideas, because that's just a conscious game. And what we need to do is access our subconscious. So I'm a believer in making things real, experimenting, trying things out to see what you can learn from it. And I got them to throw a paper airplane as an experiment. And, you know, and I asked them afterwards, I said, look, so, you know, how many of you, if we did that again, would do the same design? And very few people would, because they've just learned. And so often in life, we don't experiment enough. You know, we always think if it's important, it needs to be right and perfect. And therefore, you know, we won't experiment in a playful way because we're just desperate it goes wrong. So we lose the fun there. And then the stuff that we're doing on a daily basis, we just think, well, if it's working, we'll just crack on. We'll just keep it the same. And we don't freshen it up. So I'm just a huge, huge fan of trying new things. And actually, the whole book, you know, Upping Your Elvis, came from us experimenting for 2.5 years, trying things out. I mean, I had no idea if decluttering was going to be useful or not. You know, I mean, when I first heard I was decluttering, I was like, really? Honestly? But actually, there was something really useful in it. There hasn't been one experiment that we've done that hasn't given me something. I've always got some value. Yeah. And I think life, it should be an adventure. You know, we shouldn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, this whole kind of, you know, you get your first job, then the first job you want, and, you know, and you know, they'll pay off the mortgage and da. It's like, what does it have to be that way? Can't we have some surprises? Can't we change things up? I'm constantly changing who I am. So why should I keep doing the same stuff in the same way? Yeah. So we've got to experiment. You know, it's part of our lifeblood. And my clients love it. You know, when we get them doing it, they get a massive kick because guess what? It's just more fun to be somebody who does new and different things. It's just more rewarding. You know, every day that you have a little surprise and yippee. Shouldn't that be what life's about?
Is that, I wondered, do you work with companies on, I know there's coaches specifically for this, for like values, because I would guess, you know, we've only met each other in the last hour, but I would guess that fun is very high up on your list of values. And
it would be.
And probably a bit of variation as well and stuff like that. And I didn't ever think about values probably until I got to about 35 and started learning more about personal development. And, you know, I went to some of the Tony Robbins events around the world and stuff. And it was so funny how they'd ask you a question like, you know, what do you actually want in life? And you were like, I don't know.
Not a clue. I can tell you what I don't want.
Yeah, and that's it. You could say what all the kind of the negative things or what you don't want.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we try and ask guys is, you know, when we talk about fulfillment, you know, what you wanted 5 years ago or before you had kids or when you were just a lad with money in your pocket and a fast car, but you didn't have any other mortgage or ties, changes all the time. And I wondered for you, I mean, it's a big conversation to have about being fulfilled, but would you say that your level of fulfillment has grown as you've got older and you kind of learned more about yourself?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think that's what living's all about, isn't it? Is getting more awareness of who you are, what makes you tick and where you get your energy from. And, you know, when I was young, you know, I could survive on 10 pints of beer and a curry every night and get up strong. And that's not me anymore. That's just not who I am. I've completely changed. Yeah. And you know, I find myself, you know, walking around my garden, looking at, you know, flowers and leaves and going, oh, cool. And I never did that when I was young. You know, I'm a different person, a different place. So naturally, I think we get more attuned to it. And that's really important, because I think that's what this is all about. That's why we're here. We're here to get more fulfillment from the days that we have, because they're quite short. And, you know, I'm massively keen that, you know, every night I go to bed, I go, that counted. You know, there was something useful in that day. And it might be useful in the fact that, you know, you help somebody smile, and you help somebody with their life or their challenge or whatever's going on. Or it might be it's useful because you had an idea that you hope is going to create some value somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I just don't want to waste this time. You know, and by the way, I'm very happy to have a day where I just have a bit of pleasure myself and I don't impact other people's lives. That's fine too. But it's got to count. It's got to count.
Do you know what? That's what. When I've spoke to guys who do, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, some people love doing the 9 to 5 job, as it were. And I mean, I wish it used to be 9 to 5 because it was 6:45 till 5 or 6. But I realized with a lot of the guys, when they would discuss for me how I managed to leave working in the city, and it was hard because you paid quite well, and you know,
of course,
you got lots of money paid into your bank account each month, and you got bonuses and all the usual rubbish that you thought was really, really important to you. But I had that time where I realized I wasn't making any impact in the world apart from giving the company money, and you know, lots of investment bankers are making money off dealing with me. And I was like, is that in 40, 60 years, whatever it is, time when I'm on my, you know, in my rocking chair test, when I've got great grandchildren around me, will you sit back and be like, I'm so glad I made loads of money for other people? And you say, well, what other impact do you have? And that's where I see with your talks, with the book, with the stuff that you do, it's you know, you don't have to have it all the time, but it's that the feeling of the positive impact on helping others.
Yeah. So look, we need meaning in our lives, right? We need meaning, and it's vital. I don't know if you've read Lost Connections by Johann Hari, but
No.
it's a brilliant book, and it's actually all about why there's lots of anxiety and depression in the world, because they've lost these different connections. But also, it works very well on thinking about how do I get a positive life.
Right.
And one of the things there is all about, you know, yes, have good values, not junk values. That's really important. But also have some meaning in the work that you do, right? Because if you can access that, then that has a huge impact on your well-being. And there are a lot of people that work for money, you know, and there are a lot of people that don't have a choice. So, you know, again, I'm privileged. I have a choice. And I have been very deliberate in making sure my life is based on stuff that I'm deeply passionate about, which is getting people, you know, jumping out of bed, loving who they are and what they do, and making sure that they know that life's a game that they can win if they just have a smile on their face and they've got more energy about them. And you know what? That's what I want to do. And if I can make that show up every day, I'm a very happy man. Now, we might not be able to do it in every bit of the work we do, but you know, even if you are doing a job that sucks, you still have a chance to make somebody else smile.
Yeah.
You still have a chance to do it in your way with your personality. You still have a chance to bring some of your uniqueness to bear in any situation, all right? In any situation, because there is no such thing as a perfect job. You know, I know people that own breweries, you know, fashion photographers, and they've still got to do their expenses or do. You know, there's always a bad side to a job, right? But the question is, how do you make it fit for you better, so you feel as if your energy is aligned with that? And I personally, you know, finding meaning in the work that you do and making sure your values live through it is something we should all be doing, because then, you know, every day is a bit more technical, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I would say that, you know, people want to be around you more if you're, and again, it comes back to kind of what was it you'd written? Positivity is a superpower.
Yeah.
And we all know, if you said now you're going to be surrounded, you know, we're going to bring in a team of people and we're going to work on this big project for the next 2 weeks. And I'm not saying everybody has to come in high-fiving each other and, you know, with sunshine and rainbows, but that kind of level of positivity, I was trying to say to people, you know, you can change your mindset by changing your thoughts and, you know, again, what you're consuming and stuff. So I think that's one of the big kind of messages we try to, I say hammer home, but just gently remind people of all the time. And I know you'd said, going back to demanding feedback, what is it like for you going through life with like the book when you've written it? Do you write it and before it's published, you send it out to various people that you look for their kind of feedback, or is it kind of you publish it and see how it goes?
I'm a bit more of the latter, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously you have editors and all that kind of stuff, and there are certain people who are part of the process, so they'll read it. So probably 10 people read it before it went out, and probably 3 of those had some sort of editorial comments. So you know, I like to get feedback that way, but equally, what I've learned is this with creativity, and creativity is the bedrock of my life, I guess. At some point, you have to say that's good enough. That's all right.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges with the businesses I work with is unless it's 100%, it's not good enough. And I think that's awful. What a terrible world in which you live, where it always needs to be perfect, because it never will be, right? So you're always striving for something that's impossible. And actually, that last 20% of increments, the amount of effort that goes into that is ridiculous. You can get to 80% really fast, and you can learn. So why don't you do that? So that's why I'm into this experimenting and just checking it out there. You know what? On the first print of any book, 5,000? You'll learn. Next print, you can do some different stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not there forever, is it? So we've got to get over ourselves a bit. And you know what? Not everyone's going to like what you do. So the reality is you will never please everybody. The question is, are you pleasing yourself enough and the people you care about? And if you are, crack on. I say, crack on.
That's really important part of with the Whole Man Academy. I wrote a while ago that the Whole Man Academy isn't for all men, and what I meant by that is any guy's welcome to get involved, but I am from South London. I'm probably going to say fucking shit now and again. We're going to talk about my mindset and maybe sport and health and all these different things, and it's like if they're not the things that particularly float your boat, then it's not going to be for you. And it's finding your tribe.
Exactly. And you know what? I was saying earlier about culture change and all the stuff I do at corporates. There's a load of companies that will never phone me up, and nor should they, because we're not going to fall in love, are we? It's just going to be a nightmare. But the ones that do phone me up and we do fall in love, life is brilliant. And, I'll be grateful for all that work because it's fantastic and we make the world spin better. Yeah. We've all got to find that energetic connect. There are some people that like to be miserable and they can go and find the other miserable people and hang out. Yippee, but not on my watch around my house.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say something else. You said they can go and and I was like, oh, here we go.
I'm too loving for that.
Well, one more question for you then and I always love this one, is how did being a dad say change your life? What was it like?
In every way, I would say, in every way. So being a dad, it's really interesting because number one, I'd say it stopped me being selfish, because I think it's very easy for you to be quite egocentric in this world. And actually, this is the problem we've got with social media and everything else. Yeah. It's all about me, and how do I shape up? When you get kids, that kind of goes out the window, because you're like, actually, how do I survive? Yeah. How do I keep sane? It's a very different gig, isn't it? Yeah. And it's quite challenging. And I think you get a lot more clued up as to what's important in life, So I think it's been very good for me to get more connected to what is important. I think it's made me more empathetic, more loving, a lot less judgmental, which is great. And a lot more grateful, actually. So it's been really good for that. But I've got to say, it's grueling, and there are times I think I'm the worst dad on the planet. And I tell you what, you can't take yourself too seriously when you get it all wrong, as we all often do as dads. Yeah. It's very, very good for bringing you down a peg. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I really wouldn't.
I think it's the more. I'm what am I 40? I think, but I'm 42 now. So my eldest is nearly 4. So I went for 30 plus years of not having kids, and I would label it as I was beautifully selfish, because you could do whatever you wanted. Exactly. And if you were hungover, kids don't care if you've got a hangover. Kids don't care if you've got an expensive shirt on or you're late for an important meeting. And I was interviewing David Gandy, who's our global ambassador, as we gave him a fancy name because it sounds great. But we were laughing because you can be having a really stressful day, but you go in and the kids are having dinner, and one of them will give you a cuddle and wipe hummus all down your shirt or something like that, and you're just like,
"Get over it, Dad."
Yeah. What can you do? And you said it there. We were on a Zoom call the other night. We do a monthly Zoom call for some of the Whole Man Academy guys, and one of the guys commented. He said, "I realised how selfish I was before I had kids." And I said, and interesting to get your thoughts on it. I said that often I've found that men are under pressure to say that when a child is born, it was the happiest day of their life. And I would say for me, it wasn't. It was, I was anxious, I was stressed, hadn't had much sleep. And people are like, "Oh, can you say that?" I was like, yeah. Because until you have that, I don't think you realise what it's like.
No. I mean, I actually think there's a massive freaking conspiracy. So, all my mates who had kids went, "Oh yeah, no, kids are great. They change your life." Then I got them and I was like, "You lied to me. You just wanted me in your club so I could be miserable with you and go on holiday with you with all the other parents with kids." But then you do get it over time, don't you? You get it over time. But you know, for some people, there's a massive revelation. The first time they hold their child, it's like, and for others, it's, you know, you just don't get it for some time. We're all different in the way it works, but there is a more profound connection to, I think, humanity and life and what this is all about. And you know, that for me has been very good. And it's not for everyone, again, a bit like, you know, nothing is for everyone, but you know, for me, it's done me some good, and I'm delighted.
No, it's one of those things that you know, I've still got friends that are just about to have kids, and I always look and think, wow, I wonder how that guy will change over the next, you know, because when the baby's first born, they sleep a lot, thankfully, and you know, they're not answering back and asking you question after question after question after question. You're not having to deal with. I took our little one down to London this weekend. We went to the Tower Bridge experience and on the river boat, and you have to work out, you know, when they're hungry, when they might need to go to the toilet, all these different things, and carry their, you know, their rabbit-sized bag around with, you know, all these stuff. And I'm like, man, this is what I love, though. You go through phases in life as a man, and what's important to you at one point isn't important to you the next. So
yeah, that's for sure.
It's always interesting to talk to you. Well, last question is about if I mean, I'm going to send the whole email list that they should really buy the book, because I think it's great. But for you, what would you say that if someone's going to read the book, they would kind of, their main takeaway or a couple of takeaways would be from it?
Well, for me, I think it's all about increasing awareness of what makes you tick, and learning some little games you can play to get your energy right, and actually being a bit more brutal about it, prioritizing your energy above everything else, because everyone else will win if you get you right. And and actually, there's some very, very simple things in there. You know, you mentioned, you know, the power of napping. You know, that's a game changer for people. You know, the fact that, you know, we've got very little focus, and learning how to use it for the stuff that counts is a game changer. The whole talk it out thing for emotions. You know, so there's lots of things in there, and it's a little cherry pick. You know, so I'm a bit like you. I've read so many books. When I've got to the end, I've gone, I'm not sure what I've learned. This is packaged in such a way, you know, it's a 90-minute read. You will get 24 things you can do immediately. If you only want one of them, I think that's still good value. Do you know what I mean? Because it will have an impact on your life. So, you know, if you're one of those people that just wants value and action, it's all over there. And it's also very pretty, isn't it? Because we've got a really good designer working on it. So even if you don't like what's in it, the joy of reading it will be there. So
well, actually, do you know what? That's a question, because the front of it is just, you know, it's just the dots. So for a moment, I was like, it's because I have the digital version. And I appreciate your team were kind enough to send me the copy so I could devour it. And I was like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah. Well, look, so, and again, this is my 5th book, right? So I've done them with Penguin and HarperCollins. And I've always had a problem in the fact that, you know, they'll go, you can't do that on the cover. No one will buy it. You know, the salespeople don't like it. And honestly, the process drove me nuts. So we self-published this one. I said, I'm going to do whatever I want. And therefore, it's a bit different.
I think that's great, though. It's a reminder that, you know, it's, I say bucking the system, but it's like, you know, just because it's always been done that way, it doesn't mean it has to always stay that way. And was that for you? Would you now continue to, whatever books you do in the future, always self-publish?
I'll never say never. I mean, you know, if there is a cool, groovy publisher out there, I'm open to chat. But the problem is the publishing industry is so backwards. It's such a traditional place, and they're not very good at creativity generally. The ones that I've worked with, there are some good people out there, but you know, it's hard. And it's an old system. And what tends to happen is you tend to put your book out there. If it sells in the first week, because you get data straight away, they'll support it. And if it doesn't, they won't. And that's the nature of the business. So, you know, it's not the way I like to do things, truth be told. So that's why I'm doing it myself.
Yeah, it is a game in a way, isn't it? And if you know how to play it, but I know what you mean. It's like, I always have this thing about when, and I've got friends that say, I'm a, you know, New York Times best-selling author, and what you realize is that you can mess around with the algorithms. You can reduce the book to 1 penny, and if you get like 2,000 bought in one day, in that 24 hours it goes to the top. They screenshot it and then it disappears. They're like, I'm a New York Times, and I'm like, you're not. So I'm always like, listen, I'm never going to be one. I'm not playing that game. But
it's just a game. I mean, you know, I wrote my first book, and you know, I honestly think that because you write a book, people suddenly perceive you as different. Yeah. And it's a nonsense. It's a nonsense. All you've done is write a book. But my speaking fee doubled on my first book. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make me a better speaker. It's ridiculous. But, you know, people have got this thing. I like to write them because I get emails from people who have read them, you know, in South Korea. and they'll suddenly go, do you know what? I read this book and I've done this and it's helped my life. And
Brilliant.
there is something beautiful about the broadcast nature of books, because
Yes.
you can reach people that you can't in any other way. I like that.
And in years to come as well, I always think that's, I've been sent books by someone that's a bit of a dog-eared book that a guy who's like 60 has sent me, and I'm like, yeah, I'll read it. And then you're like, wow, this is amazing. And actually, I interviewed, I don't know if you heard of or know a guy called Daniel Priestley, who's written Keepers of Influence and various other books, but that was one of them. About, he said, if you want to, I don't know, get ahead in whatever you're doing, even if you write a very short book, a very, an ebook, people's perception of you, you're like, well, he's written a book, so he must be an expert.
It's true. It's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? But we hold authors, in high esteem, not necessarily correctly. But there we go. That's what it is. I keep writing books, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, there's a lesson. If you want to increase your fees, just write a book. It doesn't matter what's in it, just write it. But well, look, I know I'm sure you've got plenty to be getting on with, and I appreciate all your time. I could talk to you for hours, because I said to my partner today, after listening to your talks on YouTube and reading your book, I said, Chris is the kind of guy that I wish I'd have worked for.
Well, I think we would have worked together, to be honest, Anthony.
Yeah,
but I think we've had a good time.
Yeah, to learn from and feed off the energy. So I appreciate your time, and also I appreciate your team being very good with their communication and sending me the books. That's always good to see.
Always have people better than you. That's my advice.
Yeah. And what's your plans the rest of today?
Well, we've got today. Oh, I've got to do a little bit of a blog. I've got a gig with Nike tomorrow, so we've got to do a bit of prep for them. Actually, the next 3 days. And I've got to check in with the data on the test for the Talk It Out app, which is looking very exciting. Actually, we got a big old meeting with Microsoft tomorrow, so we've got to get everything lined up for that. So a fair few things, but they're all fun. They're all about making the world spin better. So I'm happy. Well,
I must say, I appreciate Chris all your time. We'll get all the links in the show notes for the book and the app. Maybe even more importantly, the app, because I know that kind of thing can really be a game changer. And hopefully, I'll see you for a coffee in real life at some point when things return to normal.
I'd love that. I would love that. Look, it's been a pleasure, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Lovely. All right, Chris. Speak to you soon.
Okay, buddy.
Bye bye.